Okay, good evening. Welcome to our March Affordable Housing Trust meeting. Um, I thought maybe I'll just kind of walk us through the agenda in advance so we know what's coming. Greg will be introducing our guest shortly, our first guest, Mike Kreisberg from Abundant Housing, Massachusetts. Then we'll have a chance to talk about what we're doing in the subcommittees and just to kind of remind us all that the development committee was going to talk again about our ideas for an ADU event. And so we'll be presenting those ideas, and the opportunity of having our guest, Mike Kreisberg, is to ask questions of fact and theory that may be useful for that conversation. I don't know if the funding or education folks want to give us any preview now. No need to do so. We'll be hearing from Tony Duong from Barrett Planning on the housing production plan goals and strategies, and then I guess a series of updates. So let's go ahead and bring our first guest, Greg.
For sure, and I'll just add and note, I put at the end of the meeting to consider that market rate development down in South Amherst. So let's leave some time to cover that a little bit. So with that noted, I will promote Mike. And Mike, I apologize. I'm not sure if your last name is Kreisberg or Kreisberg. I'm going to say Kreisberg. You can correct me. But Mike is with Abundant Housing Massachusetts. He's the policy and advocacy manager, and is working and has been working in conjunction with Abundant Housing in Massachusetts on a variety of fronts. And they were instrumental in the housing bond bill, and a big part of their participation was advocating for the ADU component. So I thought it'd be cool to have to get their take on this, and then hear about where they're going as well. In the next legislative cycle. Yeah, we're excited to have you here as a guest, Mike, and welcome, and take it away.
Great. Well, thank you, Greg, and thank you everyone for being here. I mean, I really appreciate the invite, and having the opportunity to speak. It's really great to be able to meet, in this virtual world. We can meet people from across the state really easily. So I'm actually gonna share my screen here. I have a few slides we can run through real quick, and then I kind of cut out when Greg was talking there, but I think that there'll be also some time just to do some questions at the end of the presentation, right? Yeah.
For sure, Mike. Yep.
Yeah. So as Greg mentioned, I'm with Abundant Housing Massachusetts. I'm our policy and advocacy manager, which means that I focus most of my time on developing our statewide policy agenda and then figuring out how do we pass it and how do we move it through the mercurial, mysterious state house over there on Beacon Hill. So a little bit about us. We stand up for abundant housing in all communities across Massachusetts, and I'll talk a little bit more about what exactly that means on the next slide. And how we do so is driving policy at the state and local level by identifying pro-housing change makers, building the power of local organizers, and connecting a statewide network. So what we do, we kind of have two pillars of work, really. The first is community organizing. So that means is that we have members who are across the state, who are interested in the work that we're doing, and if there's enough of them in an area, then we can help them form a local pro-housing group. I mean, we have, I think, probably close to 24 pro-housing affiliate groups active across the state, and a lot of them have been really involved in the MBTA Communities Act rezonings, which obviously is more of an Eastern Massachusetts thing than a Western Massachusetts thing, but I assume you guys are all familiar with that. I see some nodding heads. And so a lot of our affiliate groups have been really organizing in communities where there are active rezoning process happening and trying to push for more housing, trying to make the best possible plans that we can from that law. So that's one side of our work. And then the other side is I touch a little bit more, which is the statewide policy work. And so that's, drafting up a policy agenda, working with legislators in the state house to file bills on Beacon Hill, and then trying to move them through the process. Again, what I mean when we say we stand up for our housing, across Massachusetts, and that means that we believe in the need for more homes of all types. And so that means we need more public housing, we need more income restricted, capital A affordable housing, We also need more market rate housing. We need more particularly missing middle housing. Those housing units between like 2 and 20 units, more family-sized units. We really need just more housing across the state because, as I'll get into a little bit on the next slide, there's just a kind of a growing body of research showing that really at the root cause of our housing crisis is a shortage of homes. And so we're really trying to find what are the barriers that we see out there to increasing house production and to building more homes and figuring out how we can possibly change them. And then at the top here, this first bullet point again, we're focused almost exclusively on zoning and land use. Although, like if you want to check out our website later, we also have a building code bill this year, very exciting. But historically, we've been pretty much focused exclusively on zoning and land use. And there's a few reasons for that. Not the very least is the one that's probably the most in our control. Like at the state house, we can control zoning, but then also at the town level, at the city level, that's really where we can make an impact. If there's a trade war and there's giant tariffs, there's not a lot we can do about that, and the cost of materials goes up, but we can control our own zoning. We can control our housing production that way. So I think it's even more important now than ever, really, to kind of lean into what we can control. So a little bit of level setting here, calling it like the state of the state. I have a quote up here from a new report that just kind of came out from the Healy administration. She had appointed when this in 2023 now, because it is 2025. She appointed in 2023 a housing advisory council that was developing a housing plan and a housing needs assessment for the state of Massachusetts. And that actually was published a few weeks ago now. It's up on mass.gov's website, and I wanted to highlight this quote here because, again, this is just a little bit reinforcing what we see as the problem out there is that the primary factor contributing to the state's housing crisis is that there are simply not enough homes to meet the needs of the people that are living here. And a few other takeaways, I know it's always a little bit amorphous picking like a number that we need, but based off of like housing growth projections and the rate that the state is growing, they project that we'll need about 222,000 new homes by 2035. That is in the next 10 years to kind of rein in housing costs. Uh, which, if you look at our current rate of housing production post-pandemic, is a little bit more than 10,000. It's like 11,000 homes per year. So we'll actually probably need to double our current rate of housing production to reach this 222,000 home goal. And then this report kind of gets top line into some of the strategies that we need to get there. There is a subsequent report that was produced by another commission that the governor had produced that has, more in-depth strategies for uh, increasing housing production. But two of the ones that she mentions in this report are full deployment of funds authorized by the Affordable Homes Act. Again, this was a record-setting bond bill in terms of the amount of money that was authorized, record amount authorized to invest in public housing, uh, directing more tax credits towards building more housing. And this is a lot of the capital A affordable housing stuff is included in that bill. And then kind of this broad bit of revision of laws that drive up housing costs. And I think we kind of look at that a lot through what are some of the most restrictive zoning practices that we see across the state and where can we find areas to, loosen up the zone capacity in communities across Massachusetts. I know this is probably, you guys probably already know this, but still feel the need just to reiterate. Also, a little bit proud of like the fact that we were able to get this done last year. So in the Affordable Homes Act, ADUs were legalized by right in all single-family zone districts. Uh, this went into effect February 2nd, so it's actually in effect right now, even if a city or town has not adopted like a new ADU bylaw. But I think there's a lot of cities and towns, particularly ones that are doing like town meeting that haven't like updated their laws yet, but technically it is in effect. There was a report commissioned by the Healy administration that projected that about 8 to 10,000 ADUs could be built over the next 5 years as a result of that law, which is a good amount. Like that's 8 to 10,000 more homes than we have, but I think it's important for like level setting here. Again, when we're thinking if we need about to build about 20,000 plus new homes per year, this single policy is only going to get, let's say 2,000 homes a year, 2,500 homes a year. So it's really important that this happened. It will make a meaningful difference, but there is still more to be done. Then on the ADU regulations piece, so the first step of that was like passing the law, changing the state law, the state statute, saying that ADUs were had to be allowed by right, and then the regulations produced by HLC, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, put a little bit more color onto those statutes, defining exactly what is not a reasonable or unreasonable regulation, which I'm happy to answer any questions about that afterwards. It's too much to get into right now, but those regulations were released in January before the law went into effect. And then what just happened this past week is that they developed a model zoning code for municipalities that want to update their ordinance. Again, municipalities don't have to do that. If they don't, then the state law is just in effect and it would override any local law that is contrary to the state law. But I think it's smart for every town to update their bylaw if it doesn't already allow for ADUs, and so HLC has put together a model zoning code to help municipalities do so. So know that a lot of the focus here is on like how do ADUs relate to affordability, and classic. I'm going to go to California for the example on ADUs, but there's a reason for that. It is definitely the most robust ADU market in the country. Just like pointing to this graph here on the right, just to show how much ADU production has really picked up since laws began to be liberalized around 2016. Going from, we can look here, it's like 2,000 ADUs in 2016. And then in 2022, the most recent data that we have is almost 24,000 ADUs were permitted. And that, I know it's kind of tough to compare California to Massachusetts because California is so much bigger. But basically, what that translates to is that 1 out of every 5 new homes that are permitted in California is an ADU. So the construction cost, again, it varies widely. I mean, the difference between a 400 square foot ADU or a 1,200 square foot ADU are going to be huge. Again, the Massachusetts law actually caps the protected use ADU at 900 square feet. But again, a city or town could adopt zoning that allows for a bigger one. But all that's to say is it's kind of hard to get a really tight estimate on how much an ADU costs. But on the low end for the smaller ones, maybe ones that use like a pre-approved design, it costs about $180,000 in California, all the way up to $400,000. $400,000 is fairly expensive, but when you think about the median single-family home price in Massachusetts being over $600,000, then it starts to feel a little bit more reasonable. Um, this stat next here on the third bullet point I want to highlight, it's a little bit of like a mouthful here, but of the new ADUs that were built in California since 2018, 27% of them have qualified as being affordable to households making 120% of the AMI or less, which is compared to 20% for all new permanent housing. So again, I'm not trying to level set here. It's not like, these are a deeply affordable home, but on average, they are slightly more affordable than the new homes that are coming onto the market. With any new construction, if we want to get them to deeply affordable levels, 40% AMI, 50% AMI, then it's going to have to require subsidy because it is still new construction. Go to my last slide here, and this is where we talk about kind of what we're doing, the next step on the State House front. So it's great that the laws have been changed, everybody can build them. But again, looking to the California example, we see that when you just kind of change the laws itself, the people who are able to take advantage of building a new ADU tend to be the wealthier individuals who either have a ton of home equity that they can leverage or just a ton of cash on hand that they can sink into this project. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that low and moderate income homeowners could also benefit from this law. Because again, there's a decent portion of homeowners out there that even though they own their home, that doesn't necessarily mean they're swimming in cash. So we want to make sure that they have the ability to build an ADU and either live in that ADU and rent out the primary unit, or if they wanted to build it and rent it out to somebody that they could get an additional source of income to supplement, maybe if they're on a fixed income, something like that. And so what this bill does, establishes a trust fund. I don't need to explain what a trust fund is to this group. Establishes a trust fund that would, basically cover anything under the sun as it relates to building an ADU. So it could be a reimbursement or an initial outlay of funds to cover pre-development costs And closing costs, some of those pre-development costs could be, hiring an architect. If there's a tree in the backyard that you need to get rid of, like site clearance, like that sort of stuff. But then also would allow money to be directed towards lowering interest rates on loans, providing other sorts of grants, subsidies, credit enhancements, anything really that makes it easier to build an ADU um, for low and moderate income homeowners. Again, this bill doesn't at this point allocate actually any money towards that trust fund, but the first step to see it is just to get the fund on the books, and then we can, go into the budget process and try to advocate for more for money and through that way. So unfortunately, my clock wasn't going, so I hope I didn't take up too much of your time. That is my last slide. Really, thank you again for listening. Really love to hear any questions, feedback, comments, really anything.
Wonderful. That's extremely helpful, informative, and I'm sure we've got a lot of questions. I certainly do. So who would like to start it up? Well, while you're thinking, I'll go ahead and jump in. I'm interested in this act that you've passed, and I guess I wonder if you could say more about why you think a new act is required as opposed to something relating to the housing trust like us. And on the other hand, interested in the ideas about the kind of support that would make a difference for new ADUs that you envision this trust supporting, to give us ideas about how we might do some of those things ourselves.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason I think it's necessary to set up a statewide trust is the understanding that not every community might have the same commitment to affordable housing that Amherst does, and we want to again make sure that it's available to everybody. And when you say type of support, do you mean like what is the financial support that is like
I mean,
needed?
you were very specific, talking about subsidized loans or no interest loans,
Hmm.
and I guess pre-development costs as well. I wonder if you just put any numbers to some of these ideas to have a vision for, how much you would want this fund to have in order to have so much impact.
Yeah. So for the pre-development side of things, we've seen that those costs usually come out to about 15 to 20% of the total development cost. So if we're thinking of a 400, the top end, a $400,000 ADU, then that gets us to, like a $20,000 grant right there. And we're initially basing this bill off of a act in California. California offers up to $40,000 for homeowners for pre-development costs. And I think that's probably more than most people need specifically for pre-development. But again, when trying to target low and moderate income homeowners, we want to give the most amount of flexibility possible. So if somebody does have it legitimately, like only a few $1,000s of cash on hand, they can get those initial expenses paid, or then they can then take out a loan. I mean, and then on the loan part, so I mean, in Massachusetts, the lending landscape is a bit new. I think there's banks are definitely like interested in lending for ADUs, and I think that there is like money for banks to be like made on that. There's a couple different like options that are working around. The city of Boston, in fact, is actually like partnering with a few banks to develop programs targeted towards low and moderate income homeowners. So I think where that ends up will definitely influence where this bill ends up. We'll say the bill was written to be intentionally as broad as possible, knowing that this is like a rapidly evolving landscape. And so I think that like in the first, a little bit of like, part of our strategy here is like we're in a 2-year legislative session. We know the first year, I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation for banks lending on the private market. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more answers to the city of Boston, and then we can take that information and try to narrow its bill down a little bit more in the second half of the session. But from just how this process works, we got to introduce a bill so it can get a hearing and we can have the conversation.
Excellent. That's helpful. Thank you, Mike. Carol, please.
Um, Actually, I have two questions, one a comment that I just want to check out, and then a question. The comment I wanted to check out is because ADUs are on land that somebody already owns, my assumption is that the cost to build an ADU is pretty much less than anything else because it doesn't have land costs in it. That's true, right? I mean, that's one of the
Yeah.
advantages, or is that true or not?
Totally. Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my other question was one of the things that we've thrown around as an idea we haven't done much with, but might it be helpful if we came up, or we wouldn't, but we had people come up with a few different ADU designs that we could get pre-approved by our planning, by our whatever else, planning board and whoever else. Is that something that it seems to you would be worthwhile to work towards?
Absolutely. I mean, pre-approved designs are fantastic. I think that's kind of our next bit of advocacy with the Executive Office of Housing Livable Communities is to get some state pre-approved designs. I think that, I think the state is really
That's a
committed
great
to
idea.
making this work. And so if we can get the state to pay for it, and you guys don't have to pay for it, that would be good too. But I know, I don't want, I think if you guys have the momentum for it and have the funds for it, that would be really impactful. I know like some other states across the country, even if like the state has legalized it, they like the town or the city has developed their own list of pre-approved designs. You can exercise a little bit more control over it. But generally speaking, pre-approved designs, huge, huge, huge. Is the kind of the architectural and design fees are a major pre-development cost. So if we can like, get rid of that, then beautiful.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mike? Erica, please.
So I always raise this. It seems that, most of Eastern Mass, most, not all, they deal with sewer systems. And in rural communities, we deal with septic systems. So if you build, you're going to have to think about updating your septic system or having a separate septic system. Would that be covered under the pre-development costs, or what's your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, I think it would be covered under the pre-development costs. I need to double check the bill language to see if we specifically call that out. Um, but yeah, like establishing that new capacity would, seem to me a reasonable pre-development cost. Yeah, and I think I was just reading like Backyard ADUs, they are like a local-ish based company. I think they actually started in Maine, but they also do in Massachusetts. And I think like like a new septic system for an ADU can cost like up to like $10,000, which could be prohibitive. So if it's not like I'm glad that you raised it because I think it'd probably be important to like specify in the bill itself.
Great. Other questions for Mike? I mean, one question I wonder if you can comment on is just how to think clearly about the notion that adding supply supports affordable housing across the board, even if a new unit isn't capital A affordable. Can you tell us what you understand about the relationship between increasing supply and increasing affordability?
Yeah. Thanks for that. I mean, the issue that creates how high housing prices is that when there's like a shortage of home, you get competition and you get bidding wars. And so when there's a few homes that are available on the market, I think we have a very tight market right now. I mean, that's because a lot of people bought their homes and interest rates rose up, so nobody's selling their home. But we also haven't built enough homes. We have a really tight housing market, so there's not a lot of homes that are available. And when that's the case and the people still want to try to live here and move here, there's a lot of competition for those few available homes, creates bidding wars. The wealthier are always going to win a bidding war because they can afford to pay more, but it just drives, and so that's how it drives up the price for everybody. And if we have more options, then there's different places people can go to. I will say another issue that we have in Massachusetts that we have very limited like choice on the types of homes that are available. So even if we're building lots of like new single family homes, that might not be the right type of home for somebody at a certain stage of life. And so, creating ADUs and opening up that option, I think, is like a housing type that like is more suitable for people at different stages. Whereas right now we kind of have a one size fits all approach, where it's like you pretty much have to either like rent an apartment or you have to buy a single family home. And so this just creates like another option that people can rent from.
Yes, Erica.
I'm curious if, in your conversations across the state, the issue of one being in a college town, which obviously Boston is, huge number of colleges, and then building ADUs, and the concern about, well, these are could possibly be outside students, and then they're vacant during the summer, et cetera. And then you have the issue, like on the Cape, where people are concerned about ADUs just becoming summer rentals. Have you had any experience or conversations with communities about that?
Yeah. Well, luckily the state allows, as part of the statute, allows communities to ban short-term rentals. So if a community wants to do that, then they can do so. And then the issue, I guess I should say the issue about like student rentals, I think that you need to think about what like the zoning code is responsible and what it's not responsible for. And I think like building inspectors and building inspections are really important in terms of like maintaining like safety of the units, and that's kind of beyond like the scope of the zoning code. So like the zoning code determines like what is allowed, how big it is. If there's concerns about the units becoming like dilapidated or landlords that aren't taking care of their properties or students that aren't taking care of their properties, I think then, there's other avenues for addressing that, and that the zoning code isn't the best like means for doing that.
Hey, uh, I guess last chance to ask Mike a question. You've been very generous with your time.
I really appreciate you guys,
Okay,
like I
well,
said, inviting us. And, these are really great questions. And I don't know, I was glad to see lots of heads nodding along as I went through the presentation. That was good.
we're
No,
a
no
friendly
scowls. There
crowd.
weren't too many scowls, which is good.
Oh yeah, Erica, please.
Just a clarifying question. So this act has already been passed, or you have filed it and you want us to support it with written comments to say this is a wonderful thing?
Yeah, it has not been passed. We would love for you to submit written comments about it and to contact your legislators. I can send around a little bit more information about it, but I think, we'll expect to have a hearing at some point in the summer, and we'll probably do some letter writing campaigns. And yes, we would really love for you to support it.
Excellent. So, oh yes, Carol.
I was just going to say, please keep us informed when it's
Yes,
coming up and when you need some kind of anything, some support. Let us know. Let us know what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. Don't have to ask me twice. I'll
all right,
make sure
and
to follow
actually,
up
kind
with Greg and get my information around. And I think it'd be great as the trust to like be engaged in this, but also, as individuals and as residents, we'd love to get you plugged in.
Excellent, Mike. And so, yeah, look forward to being in touch. And if we get an event going out here, might you or your colleague be interested in joining a community event relating to housing? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great. Would love to come, especially now that it's like nice and sunny out. Would love to come out to
This
Western Mass,
spring. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Cheers. Good night. All right. Well, it's inspiring to see people devoting their professional careers like Greg is here with us, but all over the state to address housing. All right. Well, we have scheduled to hear from the subcommittees, and development can certainly jump in, but would education or fund is it fundraising? What do we call you guys? Would you like to start?
I can start. Yeah, we're
Great, go
the
ahead.
fund. I think we're called the funding committee.
Funding committee. Okay.
All right. So in lieu of Rob is the chairperson, and it's Rob and I. And so far, we haven't had too many outsiders join us. And Greg has been wonderful in helping us and staffing the committee. So first and foremost, we wanted to look at the short-term rentals and see if we could possibly find out, one, where that revenue is going, and two, if we can approach town council and possibly having the total revenue come to affordable housing. So I've spoken to George Ryan, and Rob has spoken to Jennifer Taub because both of them have been liaisons to the Amherst Municipal Affordable Housing Trust and are very supportive about how could we approach the town council in having this conversation. So George just reminded me in 2019, they did vote to adopt the 3% fee, which is the allowable state per the state. And under that, 35% is allocated to affordable housing or infrastructure. And he is going to find out how it's actually being allocated, because we're not clear either if any of it's been allocated to affordable housing. But we would like to see the total 3% come to us. So we're working on that. With regards to the real estate transfer fee, Grace, who's on this evening, let us know that Representative Conley and Gentile with Senator Comerford have filed a local option real estate transfer fee bill, which is an act to establishing a local option for a real estate transfer fee to fund affordable housing. So we'll have to stay in tune when that's going to be going to hearing and support that. George has also told me that town council has been working with Representative Dom to refile the local option, which can be refiled at a different time. And I think that is it in terms of our focus right now. We've been also looking at data with regards to the now I'm going to totally blank. CPA. So we've been looking at the data, and we're re-crunching the data, but that's also on our radar in terms of our next step to possibly talk to the CPA regarding what we had agreed upon as part of our action. And I see 2 hands up.
Excellent. Yeah. Alex, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Erica. I was going to mention CPA actually. So if people didn't see the initial recommendations from CPA, some good news for us. So Erica, if you'd like to speak about those for a moment.
In terms of what we are recommending?
In terms of what CPA has recommended to town council. They shared the recommendations at the Monday meeting.
Oh, okay. Then you have to tell me, because I don't have that information.
Okay.
You're the informant, Alex.
A recommendation of $300,000 for the Affordable Housing Trust. So,
that's for this year. Yes, thank you.
For this year. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So what we're going to do is we're looking at how much the CPA actually has allocated to the Affordable Housing Trust, not to affordable housing, but Affordable Housing Trust. And we're looking at the data. Thank you, Greg, for helping us with looking at the data. And we're trying to figure out, because we had recommended a minimum of 15%. And we're looking over the past few years what that percentage actually has been to the housing trust, not to the general affordable housing period. And we're going to then take the next step of making a recommendation directly to them, so we don't have to go every year to ask for funding. But yes, they have been very generous and very supportive. So thank you, Alex, for reminding me that they did approve. And thank you, Gaston, for going to the CPA this year and asking for the amount.
Yeah, well, and for Greg for doing the heavy lifting. Carol, please.
I'm sure it's just me not being clear, but there's 2 possible real estate transfer fees. One would be statewide, and one is just the town is doing it. And so which is which? And I'm sorry, you probably said, but I don't know which is which. There's one that Mindy is going to do, and one that maybe.
Yes.
So
yes.
Thank you.
So the one that Representative Conley, Gentile with Senator Comerford have filed is for the state. And that is HD 1112 and SD 1216, which will follow. What Representative Dom is doing is she is talking to town council to see if they wanted to refile. And what George had said to me is that the town council is interested in refiling the local option, meaning very specific for Amherst. And last year, I think we saw an example of that, and we had also commented on what town council had put together last year. So yes, so that I don't think that has been refiled as of yet. The date is different. The one for the state had a deadline which was refiled, but the local one is a different deadline.
Do we know whether the state filing has corrected that thing where the amount would be so the only on housing over $2 million or something? You know, the definition of what is a high end thing. There was a lot of conversation about it, and I just wondered if
Right.
if you don't know, it's okay. I can go look or
Yep.
something, but I wonder if you know what is in the way that it's being filed right now.
Sure. I don't know, but Grace is
Okay.
here and Grace might know. And when we get to the education one, I'm just going to go look it up. So,
Thank you.
um, Alex, you had a question?
No, thank you.
Okay. All good questions. Thank you.
All right. Well, those are wonderful initiatives, and I appreciate that you're thinking all kinds of ways about how to bring funding to us here. Allegra, would you like to share anything from education?
Yes. So Alex and I met recently. My timeline is off.
Friday, I think. Yeah.
Friday. And one of the things we talked about was the blurb that we had shared a few meetings ago, and that there had been a few modifications to it, and that perhaps that would be something we'd share with you tonight to see, get feedback on. But before we do that, we had also kind of gone through the list of town committees to see where it might be helpful to have some overlap. And we came up with Energy and Climate Action Committee, the Human Rights Commission, the it's renamed now to the Commission for Persons with Disabilities, I believe. And then thinking about also the Transportation Advisory Committee, Community Safety, Social Justice Committee, perhaps the Housing Authority, and then if and when the African Heritage Reparations Assembly has a successor body, because a lot of their final report focused on housing, thinking about some overlap with them. And then we also talked about the Community Land Trust. So I've reached out to about half of the organizations so far that we listed. I did receive a positive response from the Community Land Trust in terms of perhaps putting on a public forum, similar to, we were thinking perhaps also reaching out to the League of Women Voters, since they did seem to have good turnout for the most recent January forum, and kind of hopping on their network of people that they reach out to. But more to come on that. I believe I invited a representative from the Land Trust to come to our subcommittee's next meeting so that we could kind of iron out some details a little bit more. And then in terms of the Human Rights Commission, we had kind of come up with the idea of having some information available about like fair housing or tenants' rights. And the Human Rights Commission actually got right back to me, and they had said we actually had that on our next meeting agenda for next week. So we're going to show up to that and hopefully kind of come up with whether it's a forum or just coming up with information that can live on both of our websites, so that, because I do think that there's a unique, I think everybody deserves safe, fair, affordable housing. And when it's not safe or when it's not up to standards, there are ways that tenants can address that. And I think particularly with some of our college rentals, that might be something that students might not know about. So I do think that that would be an important piece of information to get out to the community, as well as rights around the eviction proceedings, especially. I'm just foreseeing that's going to be a spike that we see pretty soon with everything that's going on nationally. So I think having information available for people is important, and I think we can do that in a variety of formats. So hopefully that will be something we can discuss next Wednesday. Did I miss anything?
The only thing that I'll add is we had talked about at our next subcommittee meeting, looking at a draft of a flyer that Allegra and I were going to work on as something we can have for tabling events, but also at any events we sponsor in the future that talks just very broadly about who we are, utilizing that blurb, but also talking a little bit about benefits to the community of housing affordability and try and coalition build with that in some way. Maintain a little bit of viewpoint neutrality in that, but generally just provide good talking points for us to utilize. And once that's ready, we'll vote on that in subcommittee, I suppose, and bring that back to everybody for thoughts and feedback.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
I knew I
Okay. Great to hear all the subcommittees are keeping the ball moving forward. So for the development subcommittee, you'll recall that at our last, Alex, please go ahead. Your hand?
Sorry. Yeah. One more thing. Allegra,
Yeah.
you had mentioned wanting to share that blurb tonight.
Yes.
Do you still want to do that? Do you want to come back to that later in the meeting? What's your preference?
Is it okay if we do that quickly?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, I was wondering about that and forgot to ask again.
Great. So based on the feedback that we received at the last meeting, Allegra and I wordsmithed a little bit and came back with the following. So the Amherst Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, a group working to create and maintain affordable housing opportunities in Amherst today and tomorrow. The trust is made up of town staff and residents who are working to promote quality affordable housing that creates opportunities for people to live and remain in Amherst. Primarily, we promote these goals by providing funding to developers, engaging in outreach around housing initiatives, and providing support and guidance to the town government.
Yeah, and it sounds so it sounds good to me. I think it would be nice to get it the written version around. Grover, please.
Oh yeah, if you send around a written version, then and it's open for friendly amendments, I will give it then. There was just one word that I was like,
Yeah, does that work for you, Alex and Allegra? To if we can, in terms of open meeting law, I guess Greg, you can send it out, and then you can just reply to Greg, and then Greg will funnel them over to the subcommittee.
Yeah. And so can we just say if everyone could take a look and have feedback by, I think our next meeting would be April 4th, the first Friday of April. And that way we can review it in subcommittee.
Perfect.
Great.
When you send it out, when you send it out, can you just repeat that in what you send out?
Yep.
Thanks.
Greg, am I good to send that to you and CC Allegra and Gaston on that? Great. I will do that now.
Yeah, I will circulate it.
Okay, perfect. So at our last meeting, we the development subcommittee shared our I guess enthusiasm for trying to create an event maybe in late May or early June in order to bring together the right stakeholders to see if we can kind of get the kindling going for a little to light a little fire under development of ADUs. And we realized that we were not so clear about what our ask was or how we understand this promotes the strategy of the trust. And so let me take a first go at that, and then I will let Grover and Carol kind of jump in and add and amend to what I say. But I think that first, in terms of the ask, the ask is or the proposal is that we'll drive the energy here, and the ask would be in terms of the education team to just help us get the word out, and in terms of the funding team, we don't have any specific ask at this point, but it does seem like potentially an opportunity to get a sponsorship and just maybe get people used to the idea of supporting the trust in other kinds of ways. So why don't we just kind of keep that idea on our mind? In terms of the nexus with our strategy, I think we see two major, or maybe three kind of major pillars that that ground our interest. The first is just the very general one that adding supply softens pressure on pricing. That's the kind of the most general. More concretely, the reality is that we are learning a lot about ADUs. The kind of spigot has been opened, but we haven't figured it out so much. And so we see the opportunity of bringing developers, banks, folks who have built ADUs in town already, and communities that may be interested in doing so as a way to promote our kind of strategy of exploring ways to strengthen the development ecosystem in Amherst with innovative or new programs and policies. So we feel that we need to kind of lay a foundation in order to be able to even get specific about the kinds of programs that we heard about from Mike, whether it's funding pre-development, whether it's interest-free loans, who could we plug in to provide the kind of subsidy that might be tied to a covenant for capital A affordable, and so on. So we think that this is a move in order to strengthen the development ecosystem with respect to ADUs in town. And so to explore the potential that we might be able to create programs. And in addition to that, I mean, I guess those are the major kind of connections and rationales. And we are interested in committing to putting in the energy to get this together. So let me invite Grover and Carol and Greg to kind of pick up from there. If there's something that you want to add.
Well, I'll just say that I think this is, I see this as a great opportunity to like show the role this trust can play beyond moving money, like helping move money from one place to another, in terms of leadership within the town and tone setting and being a connector. So, it relates to the part of the strategy that's about innovative ways, and it's not like my enthusiasm about it isn't because I believe that it's going to solve all our problems to have people build more ADUs, but it will solve some problems for some people, and it will also help us build relationships and build muscles and try some things and learn from them. When I joined the trust, our conversations were really different. We weren't all sort of rowing in the same direction, it felt like, and this feels like an exciting opportunity to like try something, do it, and then go to the next thing in the plan that we put together and try something else.
I guess the only thing I agree with all of what you all both said, and I just feel like it seems like it would be so short-sighted not to do something because, oh, well, it doesn't reach down to 80% affordable. We don't know where it will reach because it hasn't been done. It takes the price of the land out of things, which is already a big thing to do. And the more it happens, if there are the more it happens, the more the costs may come down and the supply may go up, but also the costs may come down. I just think it's a thing that could develop into that stupid game where you roll everything up and then the universe it just goes anyway. It could roll up into something bigger than we can imagine right now, and so that's one of the other reasons for me. I would love to get to a place where there was something that we built that was affordable, even though it didn't have a subsidy. And I was kind of impressed by that by Mike's statistic, what 120 something percent of the houses that had been more of the ADUs were in some way affordable than just other bunches of houses that had been built. To me, that's really impressive and something to work toward and something to, okay, we got it down this far. How can we get it down this far? How can we get it down this far? So I'm excited by the prospect.
All right, well, let's take questions or comments there are any, I mean, we would, our desire is for the trust to, for the excitement to rub off. Erica.
I think it is very exciting, especially when I hear so many people who somewhat resistant to more density. And so this is also, again, an opportunity to create more housing. And I think, the concept of, possibly having model designs or helping as much as possible to make it really a fit. I mean, I've seen some wonderful ADUs. And again, I think it also serves the needs for some of the people here who really would like to have their families move in, either elder families or younger families, and still be part of a family sort of support system. I think it's a great opportunity. So I'm very excited. I think this is a very doable thing. A lot of our large projects, take forever, and it's a long pipeline. This is, I think, is really bringing resources and ideas to a community where you might have lots of people who might be interested in at least exploring it and then actually doing it. So thank you.
Alex, please.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you all for the time and energy that you've put into this and revisiting this and reframing this in a way that I think better aligns with our mission. I might remain an ADU skeptic, but that's okay. I look forward to being convinced by you all in the future and supporting you however I can, even if I disagree with some of the assumptions in there. I appreciate the energy and enthusiasm you all have for this.
All right, appreciate that, Alex. I guess just what your comment, Erica, raised in my mind is the possibility of kind of empowering residents to make a change themselves, and not having to have such big capital projects, and a little bit of kind of spontaneous development would be really exciting. So I think that you're, while you may be a little more skeptical, Alex, I think we are waiting to find out what it could be. So we're, I think just, it's half empty versus half full. I don't think any of us are clear exactly what's going to end up in the glass. All right. Well,
absolutely.
It sounds like we have kind of consensus here, and so I guess for next step, I'd like to suggest that we'll move the ball to the next stage of identifying a date or potential dates, thinking through the venue, and getting more concrete, and coming back to you with those ideas at a future meeting. Okay. All right. Greg, does that anything to point out here?
Just to kind of put a period on it. I could say a lot, but I think this is a thing we can do and then watch. I mean, perhaps there'll be opportunities to keep the ball rolling actively, or perhaps we do an event and connect some people to some resources and wait a while. So to me, I like it because it's a measured investment of our human capital and time, which doesn't lock us into a perpetual thing necessarily, unless we wanted to.
And the idea of getting an event together, that might be the main fare, but we can use this as a way of connecting other resources. And so I'd like to invite all of us to think about who else we would want to try to get to this sort of event, once we kind of create the foundation for it.
I think that lenders will be particularly interested, and I think it's always good. I think it's good to actually have a reason to make some connections with them.
Okay, well then let's keep our agenda moving along and invite Allegra, please.
Sorry. I feel like we had a conversation. I don't remember who it was with, but there was some idea of like mapping where these could go. And I don't remember who was doing that mapping, but perhaps some targeted outreach to some of those areas would be helpful in preparation for that kind of event, so that we would be, saying like, hey, if you might be interested in this, you are an ideal place for this to happen. And we can connect you with some of the resources that could potentially help.
Absolutely. I think that it's either just flyers to those target neighborhoods or door knocking would be a fun thing to do, and I think the right thing to do given the vision that we've got. All right. Well, yes, Alex.
I agree with the point brought up by Allegra, but I'd also like to remind us still that the state bylaw allows attached ADUs and fully internal ADUs as well. So I know we're waiting on a town updated bylaw, but there, to my knowledge from my reading of it, are no properties that would be completely excluded from the opportunity to have an ADU under this. It might just look like something else. It might look like more of a conversion internally. Please correct me if you have a different reading, Greg, but I see you nodding. So I'd invite us to remember that in outreach. And yes, there are neighborhoods we can focus on that might feel more approachable to people, but let's not be too targeted in that we're missing whole populations that could also benefit.
Good, excellent. And yeah, it'll be a good chance to figure out what's the technique of getting word out that works for this trust. So it'll be a chance to get some experience generally just on doing events of that nature. Okay, so let's get our invite our next guests to the meeting. Tony.
Yep. So here comes Tony Young, who you all know of Barrett Planning, who is here to share updates regarding goals and strategies for the housing production plan and get and see how those landed. So I sent that a couple days ago. Might be helpful. I'll maybe do part of Tony's job here and just ask, show of hands if folks have time to read those. Or okay, so some familiarity, but not across the board. So Tony, I'll let you interpret that as you will. But
Sure. Thank you, Greg. Happy to be here as always. Yeah, I'm glad that you're able to, a few of you are able to, read some of that. There's a lot of detail and information, especially around each of the strategies, supporting each of the goals. Greg and I have talked yesterday, and we're going to revise a little bit of the language surrounding some of the I guess the goal statements, but it won't be too drastically different from what you have in your hands right now. So with that said, I do have a few slides I'd like to share with you, just to go over, very quickly, I guess the important topics and what can the next steps look like. So. All right. Okay. Are you able to see this okay? Great.
Yep.
All right, view. So as I'm sure you all know, we're approaching the very end of this project. We are now onto the housing goals and implementation stages. We sort of worked with the housing goals and implementation strategies at the same time. We felt like it's hard to work and develop strategies or goals without also working on the other at the simultaneously to see where it all ties together and how they support one another. So last time we had also discussed what housing goals looked like in the past planning efforts. So many of these goals still hold to this day. So you may hear a few more today that will sound a bit familiar, but we have more specific action items and strategies to support them as well. And so with that said, before I share with you our proposed strategies, I'd like you all to keep in mind a few of these questions as we go through the next several slides. What are your priorities? What strategies specifically do you agree with? What strategies present the most concern for you or that you disagree with potentially? And whose needs are missing or do you feel are not being specifically addressed by any of these goals and strategies? And so I'm gonna quickly go through our list of strategies in the next few slides. But if you have been able to read, the document that we've shared with you, that may be helpful. But if not, then I'm happy to clarify any unclear points or strategies in the time that we have. All right, so first, I have to start that we categorized our the goals, the findings, and the supported action items into these four major themes. The first being increasing affordable housing options. Amherst, faces a major shortage of safe, decent, and affordable housing, especially for low-income residents. The second theme is, that we want to expand opportunities for housing choice. There's a lot of regulatory barriers and insufficient housing diversity, which creates, impediments to housing choice and thus consequently raising housing costs and reducing the availability of housing options. The third, reducing public and financial barriers. The capacity to build housing is limited by or to the amount of public support, the financial ability of stakeholders, and the funding granted to housing organizations and programs to support development. And the last major theme is, managing shifting demographics. Demographic makeup of the town is evolving. There's a lot of families leaving. Off-campus student presence are increasing, and the population of seniors are declining as well.
Tony, is it okay if I ask a question here?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just, maybe it becomes clear later, but I'm struggling to really distinguish the top two themes of adding options or adding choice.
Sure. We found that we have a lot of specific strategies that sort of target one aspect of, I guess, the theme of affordability. So there's a lot of one being there's a lot of strategies that first address housing affordability, but also housing diversity and housing creation at the same time. But because there's so many, we want to distinguish them. And so for the first theme of increasing affordable housing options, I think if we go through the specific strategies more in detail, it could help you or
Perfect. Thank
clarify what I mean by that. But and expanding housing opportunities for housing choice is going to focus more on removing regulatory barriers like regulations in the zoning bylaw, and whereas increasing affordable housing options could be specifically looking at rental pricing and sort of that nature. Okay, so increasing affordable housing options. We have three goals for this: to expand availability of diverse housing types in order to stabilize rent and housing costs, develop housing options across a range of different price points, and particularly for lower to middle income residents, and maintaining the availability of existing income restricted units. The third, minimizing housing expenses to enhance affordability and to ensure everyone has access to secure and safe housing. So the following strategies, I'm not going to list them all, but a few important ones that I think are notable. One being updating the inclusionary zoning bylaw to encourage more low and moderate income units. For instance, in addition to what the current IZ bylaw states, and the provisions that it already has for the deeply affordable units. In addition to that, to consider adding a provision for reserving specifically for middle income households. So people within the 80 to 120% AMI range. Another strategy for this theme is to establish Chapter 40R smart growth districts and attempt to revive consider reviving the last attempt to establish this a few years ago, and this time around learn from why it wasn't ultimately successful, and resolve any issues that were raised back then. And so the next theme is to expand housing choice. The goal is we want to create more inclusive housing types. We want to streamline housing development by reducing regulatory barriers and accelerating the approval process, and promoting higher density mixed use housing development and missing middle housing. So one strategy could be upzoning residential districts townwide to enable the creation of missing middle housing, and consider adopting pre-approved design plans for small-scale residential projects. So, creating a pattern book or a lookbook of different housing design types, and developers or homeowners can look through them and sort of pick through the list of approved designs, so that they don't have to go through the overwhelming time it would take to get approvals, and to minimize the discretionary review process for that, and sort of just expedites the process for them. And the third theme is reducing public financial barriers. We want to invest in public financial education and increase community support for housing initiatives, generate additional funding for housing programs and organizations, and fostering collaboration with developers and other stakeholders to support housing projects. So, a strategy could be assisting developers in pursuing public subsidies to create affordable units that are affordable to the 30 to 60% AMI households. And to do that, for instance, clearing pathways to funding sources like the low-income housing tax credit program, and connecting developers to organizations that would help them throughout that process. And another strategy potentially could be providing training and technical assistance for homeowners interested in building small-scale residential projects. So removing as best as you can any uncertainties, and educating interested homeowners in navigating throughout the process. The last major theme is to manage shifting demographics. The Amherst, would probably want to promote a strong sense of community by encouraging social economic diversity, help residents maintain or remain in their homes as they age and attract new families to live in Amherst, and support the development of student housing while preserving home ownership and rental opportunities for year-round residents. So there's one strategy that was being raised, and after looking into it, I found really interesting. So supporting alternative living arrangements and home sharing programs for seniors and students. So Boston had implemented a pilot program a few years ago with this home sharing website called Nesterly, and they found that so what it is senior residents, if they have a spare bedroom, they put that room on this website, and yeah, and it's I believe it's vetted very well. So there's very little concern for any safety issues and sort of that nature, um, and they pair the website pairs them with younger students or college age students, maybe younger professionals who are looking for a room. So they essentially share this home, and this pilot program has found a lot of um, benefits for both parties. The host, the senior host, was had more assistance with daily living activities like getting chores done, running errands, or even pet sitting. And the guest or the student renter was able to save a little bit more on housing or rent than they would be if they were to look for a bedroom through the market. Um, and another strategy that would support these goals is sorry, increasing funding for the public schools. We found that that's very uh, successful in attracting families with children. They want to bring or put their kids in a decent um, school system, so that's going to be a very good draw to retain and attract families to live in Amherst. All right. So last time we've met, we've also discussed coming up with numbers for how many units that we would want to create in the next 5 years. You've asked that we come up with a low target and a high target to sort of cover sort of like the different needs that we've identified in town. So the low target, we had come up with 265 total units by 2030. So um, this more or less follows Chapter 40B's minimum annual production guidelines. Although Amherst is not subject to this requirement, given that the town has already over 10% of its housing stock as on the subsidized housing inventory. So this formula, town doesn't have to follow this, but it more or less acts as a low benchmark for how many units that the town could add each year. And the high ends of the target could look at it in two different ways. So high target A is going to look at the gap between the number of cost burden households and the number of existing income restricted units at their respective income levels. So this table is it's data pulled from the housing or the HUD and the data estimates for how many households at each income level, how many households were found to be spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And we cross-referenced it to the data that the town had provided us on how many units on the SHI list are actually income restricted and capital A affordable. And so housing target B or high target B, 715 total units by 2030, is going to look at the number of all cost burden households over 30% AMI and the number of households under 30% AMI that are family or elderly households. And then dividing that by 2 to to get a number closer to high target A, and looking at considering factors of feasibility, looking at trends in housing production and permitting, and also how many units that the town was able to create since the last housing production plan was adopted. Um, and yeah, that's all the slides that I have for you tonight. If you have any thoughts, please, I'm happy to hear them out. So the proposed production targets, you know, we're not married to these numbers at all. We're, open to amending them. And if you have any ideas for, like, if there are needs that you don't think have been addressed in any of these goals or strategies, and, please
Hey,
let us know.
you got people's interest, Tony. Thank you. Grover, please.
Of course.
Thanks, Tony. I have some questions about this slide here.
Mhm.
One is I'm curious why there's such a big gap between the low target and the highest target.
Mhm.
Like yeah, why is there not like a 400 unit range? And excited to hear some very smart, wonky answer to that. I imagine there is one. So that's my first question. And then my second question is curiosity about how, for example, 715 units, the logic that we would say to town councilors or a member of the public about if there are more than 1,500 cost burdened homes, how is 715 new homes across a range of target occupancy income levels going to resolve that?
Sure. So to answer your first question, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I don't know if I would say this is very involves very like smart calculations. It's mostly we um, I we identified how many cost burden households there are just based on the data that was given to us, and we simply um, just I calculated the gap that how many households are spending way more than they should, um, and we do acknowledge that the target, if you do build 700 approximately units, not all of them are going to be affordable or income restricted. And so it's more of, sort of this is the number of households that are struggling to meet or to pay for housing. And this is the number that, you should, keep in your mind and, making housing decisions or policy and keep in mind how many households need units to move into. And, granted, this may sound a bit arbitrary, but we do want to account for, we could put out a target of 1,500 or 2,000, but we're worried, that's just how feasible is that going to be, and how likely is that going to pass the town and the decision makers, right? I think so. To answer your second question, if we have uh, you know this column showing almost 3,000 households cost burden. Vast majority of that, of the 30% and below AMI households, are off-campus student households, and we do want to acknowledge and account and I guess adjust our calculations to account for that, as well. Yes. I
Alex,
forgot.
yeah.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Tony, for being here, and to you and your entire team for this. I got an opportunity to read through this pretty thoroughly and was very impressed with most of what I read. I had some feedback and some questions that I'll try to go to quickly. But first, I guess just a guiding question. What comes after this? Are these strategies going to be broken down into specific action items, or are these strategies envisioned as the action items themselves?
Um, so the way we approach developing these lists of strategies, so you know your town best, you know it, you know what Amherst is most capable of. So for, the more, I guess, specific actions, I think that we want to leave that up to you to sort of decide like how do we achieve or accomplish these strategies. But the strategies are more or less um, a little bit, I guess, I don't know, broad, but not, to support, the goals that are going to be, looking at like what do you ultimately want to achieve, whereas the strategies are going to be a bit more, I guess, targeted. But we don't have, maybe for a few of them, we do have, very, I guess, specific, tasks or objectives that you could implement, but um, we're not going to be able to do that for, every single strategy because we feel like that's up to you to decide. For instance, raising the inclusionary zoning bylaw provision. We could suggest 15 to 20%, but ultimately it's up to you as a town to decide, how high you would want to raise that.
Great. Okay, thank you. Well, thinking back to the questions that you started us off with and asked for specific feedback on, I had responses to some of them. So one of them was, are there any populations that we feel like are left out from this? Overall, I was really happy with the representation that I saw throughout the goals and strategies. I was a little surprised and maybe concerned that, at least from my read through, I didn't see any mention of individuals experiencing homelessness. I know there is a talk about rental assistance for housing insecure, extremely low income households, but I would have loved to have seen at least one strategy, possibly under the increasing affordable housing options, that mentioned an increase in supports for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. So that was the one overall takeaway. I did really appreciate the specific call to action from the Amherst Housing Authority and also the promotion of the idea of cottage court development, which I think seems to strike and other middle housing typologies, which I think strike a balance between increasing density that we need, but in a way that seems more in line with the character of the town. And the other thing I wanted to say I really appreciated was the mentioning of parking requirement recalculation and thinking about the proposed University Drive overlay as well. So thank you all for mentioning those and doing that work and being familiar with our town in that way, and also mentioning the AHRA successor body as well, and referencing their plan and making sure that that's carried forward into town goals.
Yeah, thank you so much for that feedback. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, we'll definitely go back and look into, to, what, I guess, target the, or add a strategy or maybe incorporate something to, address directly the needs of those facing housing instability and homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony, I guess my comment relates to Alex's first question, and I like all the verbs you've got in the report. When you say, it's up to you to figure out where, there's no you, there's no you that is Amherst. There's no one person that is Amherst. And so I would really feel a lot more comfortable if you pinpointed who is the actor that can actually do any of these things, so that we have some accountability and some finger pointing.
Sure. So that is we do have a plan to add that into the document. It'll, be in the form of, a table that will list, all the strategies in the column, and then we'll have, have a column for like who's going to be the main responsible party for each one, and more of those details in a later version of the document.
and I guess just to follow up on that directly, that sounds great. But I wonder if anyone who's being tagged as having a responsibility in this can have a chance to know that that's what the report is going to say. So if they want to push back, they should push back before this is published, so that once it's published, we can get angry if people aren't doing what it says here.
Okay, that's a
Something
really
like
good
that.
point. Yeah,
Something
thank
like
you.
that. Erica.
Yeah, that was my comment as well. It's very comprehensive. It's pretty amazing. It's very idealistic in 5 years, and without what Gaston just identified, it's going to be very difficult to achieve. And it's too bad that Paul's not here because I would love to know how this plan is then brought to the zoning board, the planning board, the financial department, et cetera, so everyone's on board with understanding, what the commitment is to doing this. This is a Amherst Town's housing production plan. We're a part of it. Absolutely, we're going to do our part. But I think there also needs to be. I'm sure this is probably going to go in front of town council as well. But I think it would be very important to identify who the parties are who needs to support it in order to achieve it, because 5 years is a very short period of time. But thank you so much for all the work.
Yes, thank you. I think that's something that Greg and I and the rest of our team is going to have to discuss and or come up with, sort of how we want to approach presenting this to your regulatory bodies and to best increase, the chances of adoption and really, make everyone happy and make sure that everyone has provided, we provide a lot of opportunities for people to, share their input, to go through, all the documents that we've shared and that Greg has uploaded to the website. And but there will be, so after this, we're going to, um, like I did want to tell you that, looking ahead, we are going to share with you the final and complete draft, not final, but complete draft of, the housing needs assessment, the goals, strategies, and, as well as, the fully written narratives, with a deeper discussion on how this all ties together, by, say, the first week of April. And then, so that's going to incorporate all of the revisions that we've heard tonight as well, as and anything that you will want to share with us between now and then. But then, we'll share with you the complete draft, and then you will have another opportunity to put it out to the public, and read through it again one more time, and um, you know that's what because it's going to be another opportunity for you to give us more feedback and input, and then we will incorporate those revisions and then send you, another final revised document, um, and you know and hopefully that will incorporate everything that and address any concerns that anyone might have, and yeah, and then we'll go from there, I guess.
Hey, Carol.
Yes, Carol.
I want to say I'm grateful for all the work that you've done, but I must admit a disappointment. And that is at the place where you said a couple times, well, that's for you to figure out. Like, how much should you increase the inclusionary housing amount? Or that's the one that sticks in my head. But I would hope that you would be able to tell us, because all these things are connected, if you want to get to this, what you might want, what would help would be if you did this and recommend something. I mean, telling us it's up to us, you guys just put all the expertise and energy and all this stuff into figuring this all out. Give us more recommendations. Tell us what it should be. So I don't know. I'm grateful and also a little disappointed that we don't have more concrete direction.
Okay, no, thank you. I understand. I think others been concerns that that there hasn't been enough concrete I guess, objectives that are in this plan. So, um, and yeah, we'll go back and we'll revise and whatever strategies that we feel necessary that that would necessitate something more concrete. Then yeah, we'll go back and incorporate that for sure.
Because Amherst has a million opinions about anything you want to think of. So having somebody have
Sure.
a real concrete suggestion could be very helpful. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah. Yes, Alex.
Kind of building on what Carol said, I actually was kind of surprised in the other way after hearing you speak. I think there were a lot of items that felt fairly actionable to me or felt like strong recommendations. Looking at the inclusionary zoning principle, I know that there is a recommendation in there to raise it to 15%. So I was impressed with some of that. I do think it could be helpful to, and I understand this is a draft and this is front matter that would likely be in here anyway, but just identify the next steps and where this document leaves off as opposed to where it's supposed to pick up to help us all better understand what the scope of work that they're actually had is.
Yes. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might make sense to speak to process a little bit, as far as what the town's going to do, and kind of how Nate and I decided to look at this, and we, as you might remember, it is not at this time a vital concern that EOHLC approves this plan. We hope that they will. But we're not, we don't, it's not as urgent as some communities that are below the 10% SHI number, which has, implications, which often drives things. So for that reason, Nate and I, decided to sort of encourage Tony, to, and Tony's colleagues to kind of go a little bigger and bolder, and spell out, what should be done rather than what do we think is definitely approvable by the planning board and town council, which are the two bodies that will have to vote on this. So the next, the next step here is, those entities in planning board and then council would vote on it, and then EOHLC would approve it with their affirmative votes, presuming they like the other aspects of it. The thing, so as far as how to think about that, right, is, we, this is a suite of strategies that, that we think will make an impact on housing. The planning board and council voting on the plan does not in and of itself adopt any of those strategies, right? It says, we think this is overall a good plan, and there's some sense of commitment towards considering these strategies, right? So this is a policy document, and it's a way to frame the conversation in town, and get us going. But it's not like just one vote, unfortunately. Though I wish that were different. So so I think the hope is that even if planning board members and council members have quibbles with, how much should the inclusionary be changed by? Or, geez, you really want to do 8-unit townhouses in this zoning district? That feels like a lot. But we'll take it on concept and get into the details later, right? So that's kind of like where, where the mechanism of this goes. And then I think it's a question as far as the, as far as the sort of game plan for each strategy. I mean, I think some of those lend themselves to specific game plans. Some of them are going to be more situational. But I think what this group can very much do is look at, presuming we get it passed through those bodies as a whole plan, to say, hey, like, what are the, are there things that we should really lead with as a town, and advocate for those things, with the relevant decision makers. That's process. I'll stop there, but that's kind of where that's a bit about what's next.
Thank you, Greg.
Any, Tony, I guess hearing the range of comments and questions, anything more you'd like to say or ask of us?
Sure. Yeah, so again, this is a working draft, so please, if you have more comments, take the time to read through our the draft that you have in your hands and uh, you know, send them to Greg and then he'll share them with us and then um yeah, and we're gonna consider everything that we've heard tonight and into the next draft that we'll send you in April. So
Yeah, and just to reiterate, the document I sent to all of you has much more detail than Tony's slides did tonight, so it's worth having a look at the descriptions.
All righty. Well, thank you so much. It's great to see the progress over the months, Tony.
Mhm. Sure. Oh, and also I forgot actually, I do would like to, would like to ask that you specifically, um, going through the document and if you have a thought or please tell us how you feel about these target numbers as well. Do you feel like they're too high? Is there too low even? Or if it's you don't think the calculations sufficiently included a need that you would want prioritized. That's something we'd like to know and consider as well. But yes, that's all I have for you tonight. Thank you for having me as always. And yeah,
All right.
have a great night.
Okay, good night.
Thanks,
Thank
Tony.
you. Thanks, Greg. Bye.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is a late addition responding to some news about a market rate project involved that's in part of Hampshire College. So let me pass on for Greg. Do you want to introduce the topic a little better than that?
Sure. Yeah, and I don't have that much, unfortunately. I've got a architectural thing that might be hard to see in the screen, but this is a development that is proposed, and it's owned by Amherst College, and Archipelago is proposing to build it, and I think purchase it from them and build it, but they have an option to do that right now. And the trust was contacted by a council member who wanted to make us aware of it, that it's going before the planning board next week. In considering that perhaps members of the trust individually or perhaps the trust as a whole might want to weigh in on the relative merits of this. So yeah, that's kind of the setup. But it's let me see if I still have. I mean, I can show folks the architectural rendering if that's helpful. But it's about 140 units, fairly sizable, with the commensurate inclusionary units in that down by Atkins Market. Yeah, so I'll stop there. But Alex, looks like you have a hand up. Is that?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask if we could postpone discussion of this in more depth until we have a little more information. I know that the hearing for this is coming up soon, but also, as you said, there's just not a lot of robust information so far. And I would encourage everybody to look through it on their own time and consider supporting it or not on their own. But in the interest of time, knowing that we need to discuss open meeting law changes and some tenure changes with the trust, ask that we consider postponing trust-wide discussion.
Well, so I mean, one point of bringing this up was to indicate that there is this hearing, and so that's, I guess, an opportunity. I mean, no doubt, nothing happens, nothing gets done in one hearing alone. So there's going to be future opportunities, to be sure, to comment and do so more on a more informed basis. So Alex is suggesting postponing going into it any further. Any reactions or comments to that suggestion, Erica?
I just want to say, yes, we can postpone it, but I think, we should also consider we just had this conversation about more housing that it then lowers the pressure of uh, affordability. With this particular project, I think they're going to be about 17 affordable units, and there's also going to be commercial property, which increases the tax base for Amherst. So yes, let's all look at it at our own time and make a decision if we want to comment on March 19th at the planning board or wait until further notice. But I don't also want to lose any opportunity to show that that we're interested in increasing more housing.
Right. I mean,
So
I see the number 140, and it's close to the low number that that Tony put forward, right? Of 240 or whatever it was. I mean, I guess I wonder if there's any, do we need to know more about the project to be able to say that we are enthusiastic about the development of housing in Amherst? Maybe that doesn't add too much to the hearing next week.
I guess my question would be, do we have any sense that the developer is planning on including those units, or has there been any mention of like possibly doing the pilot, the trust, or is that something that they wouldn't even know at this stage of the game? So I think that would be something that I'd like to know more about.
So I can answer. If it gets built, there'd be an obligation to build inclusionary units. So so I think we could bank on that, including at the split affordability levels. And I'm not quite sure what you meant, Allegra, by
The in lieu payment, I think, is what Allegro.
I see. Sorry, like a pilot, like yeah. So I'm pretty sure their obligation, the building is too large to do an in lieu payment. So by as the bylaw is written, they're prevented from doing an in lieu for a building of this size.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I mean,
Mike,
Your mic.
sorry. On the one hand, yeah, 140 units, and some of them are going to be affordable. Great, hooray! But that's all I can say based on nothing other than the number. And I don't know if that's valuable or not valuable. I mean, they'd say that about anything that said that about it. And maybe we would have a more valuable thing to say if we had more information. So, I mean, I read about it in the paper and I was like, oh, yeah, this looks great. But I don't really know much. It's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm not clear about is what more we might say besides yay. Does anyone, I mean, Alex, you're the one who suggested that we talk about it further. What can you imagine? What sort of comment do you imagine that we might give besides yes, we support housing?
I was actually asking to postpone discussion because I don't know if we have enough information to
I'm
say
saying suppose
whether.
we had all the information you could
Right,
ever
okay.
want. What
Okay.
could we possibly say besides yes, we like housing, build it if you can?
No, I think that's at the end of the day all we could and should provide on this if we decide that's appropriate. I just don't know if that's a good use of our time today.
No, I mean, what I'm saying is
Yeah.
we've talked about it all that I think I would need to talk about it to be able to say we support housing, and I'm not sure what more we could say than that. Is I'm asking in theory, what further kind of comment could we possibly have, even if we had all the information and we were, super knowledgeable about the details of the project?
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So something that jumped out to me is there's within the proposal that they attached a ton of parking spaces in this project. like 2 per unit.
Okay.
I'm curious to see more of a traffic plan from them, but
Okay.
also look at if this is something that's providing affordable housing units, like capital A affordable housing units. Great, we support affordable housing units, but how does this tap into existing networks? How does this work with transit? How does this work with nearby employment? How does
Right.
this work with nearby services? So that's part of it. The other one is seeing some more. They have some unit breakdowns on here in terms of what they're talking about. Um, this same developer has proposed similar projects before and then very drastically changed unit breakdowns later in the
Okay.
process.
All
The
right.
thing that jumped out to me is there's 3-bedroom units listed on here. If that happens, they would be required to have 3-bedroom units that are open to be capital A affordable because there's a lottery system for that. That would be fantastic. We have a huge identified need of missing capital A affordable 3-bedroom units,
Okay.
but I would like to wait a little bit longer to see if that's still the direction this is moving in,
Okay.
or if we see more course adjustments as we continue with as volatile as development.
Okay. No, I mean, it really is helpful for me to hear your answer, Alex, because I guess one question is, do we even feel like it's our role to comment on traffic patterns? Certainly when we talked about the development on University Ave, we did raise the concern about the food desert issue, and so I can't differentiate having a concern, about the one and not the other myself at this point. So your point is well taken, and also weighing in support of larger affordable housing units. So I mean, I'm persuaded that if we're gonna say anything as a trust, that we, even if we have just the information you've given us, we need to talk about it more to decide what we would want to say as a trust about it. Is people comfortable with that? Okay, then let's.
Thank you.
There are some other updates. Thank you, Alex, very much. Updates, Greg. You're muted.
As a follow-up, just that last item, would it be helpful to be joined by somebody representing that developer and or Hampshire College to give a not a brief presentation, with some, and to answer some specifics? I can make that invitation. I can't promise they'll come, but okay. Great. So I'll do that. And yeah, and if anybody goes to the planning board, be cool to hear a report back, even informally. So we talked about that. So yeah, I think town updates. I think the most notable thing, and mindful of time here, is some of you may have heard, Hickory Ridge is no longer on the docket for a fire station. Opening, and the door was never really closed, but now the door is wide open for a housing use. So that's exciting. And there's been discussions both a little bit informally at the staff level, and I think from community as well, around senior housing there. Unclear if there's senior housing developers who might be attracted to that kind of a parcel. So, but we're beginning to explore that. The South Amherst School RFP was won by Joy Squared, which is the narrow gate, who did the last one with the VFW. So they're going to do a similar process with that. What's cool is this time they'll have 3 iterations. So they'll have 3 different concepts at the end of it. So we're having a launch meeting for that on Monday. And the VFW are working on a RFP for that as well. I've been working on that this week. Community homes pre-qualified, and Amherst Community Homes coming along. I'm scared about tariffs, but I haven't heard anything. So hopefully no news is good news. The matter, just for the heads up, really, there's not that much to discuss other than the state legislature has not yet acted to extend allowances for towns to do virtual meetings, and that the current allowance expires at the end of this month. I haven't dug into the weeds too much. I guess they've extended it at the last minute a lot in a few times already. Right now, that action is tied up in a larger piece of legislation, probably strategically. So maybe they'll pull it out. But just the heads up is there is a chance that this meeting is in person in April. And how the town will manage that space wise, I've asked but not really heard anything particularly. I think probably most people are assuming it'll get extended. I don't know, but just heads up. Yeah, and then the membership stuff is just we are probably gonna we'll definitely cycle through some members, I think, in June. So look out for a public push for all committees in the near future, and feel free to share that out. And there are some folks in the queue apparently already as well, I'm told. So.
But any one of us, just take a minute to think who are other folks who could put in some real energy and caring into what we're doing here, and see if we can do some other recruiting as well.
All right.
Okay, anything that we have not anticipated? Then
it looks
Alex.
like
Yeah, I asked for it at the last meeting. I know it's not productive now as we're waiting to see if open meeting law provisions are extended or not. But if they are extended and we're still allowed to meet virtually next month, I would appreciate some time on that agenda to discuss if that makes sense moving forward, or if we can look at a hybrid format for meeting.
yes.
Good, thank you. Oh, and we've got a hand up in the audience.
Go hand went down.
I was just gonna say that I think Laura has her hand up in the audience.
Well,
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Ah, wonderful. So I raised my hand at the point when Gaston was asking why you might want more information about the South Amherst project. And I just wanted to add a couple of things because I've seen similar developments. So one thing that the trust might want to advocate for in a scenario like that is deeper affordability. So if the bylaw, inclusionary bylaw, only requires 80% AMI units, which probably is what it does, it's a point of negotiation when someone is permitting. And so it could be an opportunity to try to get some deeper affordability. With some of the other Amherst inclusionary zoning projects, it seems like when folks do that just for the purpose of getting more density, sometimes they are weak on the marketing and outreach for those units and claim that no one rents them. So it could be brought to the attention of the planning board or zoning board, whoever's permitting, that, they should be expecting a marketing plan. They should be, they should have confidence that developers not only kind of in name only, including these affordable units that then are going to sit vacant because it's too much trouble to do the income verification on the tenants. There's a similar development in Sunderland that was a 40B, where essentially they built a large number of student housing units, and then they sprinkled in affordable family units. And honestly, it feels like a weird place to live. And so I would be curious about, as Alex says, the size of the different units and the configuration of that, and the common areas and amenities. So the one in Sunderland feels honestly like a dorm, like it's got like a pool table and the place where you put the keg, and it just feels like student housing. So if this is intended to genuinely house families, what are the amenity spaces that would be appropriate for families? It really becomes very telling when you start to look at some of those features that Sometimes it's lip service only for the low to moderate income families. So I think there's a lot actually of influence that's really important that the trust could have during this permitting phase. If it's 17 units, that's a fair number of units. So you could weigh in on the quality, the affordability, the common area amenities, et cetera, for those units. And if it's okay, I wanted to give an update on Amherst Community Homes, but I don't want to. It's getting late.
Can you give us the lightning version?
So we are in closing, woohoo! Which means we're starting the process of closing on financing. All the financing is secured. Our goal is to get shovels in the ground in April. And so we are super excited about that. We will be planning a groundbreaking and we'll let you all know when that is. It will be a fairly low-key affair, but we do want to mark the beginning of construction in some way. In terms of tariffs, we pushed really hard, and in part thanks to your contributions, we were able to push hard to get a contract with the contractor signed at the end of last year. So they have been buying out their subcontractors and materials rapidly. I mean, all knowing really about the election and potential for tariffs, all that stuff was writing on the wall. And so we all hustled to try to get as much material secured prior to all the chaos that we're seeing unfolding now. It doesn't mean it won't touch us, but we did try to get a jump on it. So thank you.
Terrific. And we're not even within 2 minutes of 9 p.m. So I think we are ready to entertain adjourning. Unless there's something. Greg, go ahead.
I'll just note that Valley's also doing outstanding outreach work on finding prospective buyers for those homes already. So we're
wonderful. Well, we're keeping to our allotted 2 hours, assuming we can adjourn on a hands up, and we're all excited to move on with our evening. So nice to see everybody. Till next time.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
thanks
Good night.
everyone. Good work.